Hello, and welcome to my YouTube channel, Scary Fact Fiction. Today is part 3 of my first night alone in my new house didn't go very well, our no sleep story from Reddit. The original poster, the Little Red Fox 326, posted this story over 6 years ago. Grab yourself a cup of your favorite beverage, relax, and let's get started. Steve and I found some things today, disturbing things. After I updated early this morning, when Danny woke me up, I had a terrible time getting back to sleep. I had almost drifted off when I nearly vaulted out of the bed. I heard what I thought to be a baby crying. Upon waking up more, I figured out it sounded more like one of the cats meowing or howling, sort of like they do when they're picking a fight with another cat. I think I fell back to sleep before it stopped, because it seemed to go on and on. Steve and I drove back to my house after we had breakfast. Danny and Nina refused to get in the car, so I left them at Steve's. Ben, of course, came along with no problem. We were walking the perimeter of the deck together and spotted something on the exterior wall. It freaked me out so bad I wanted to leave right then, but Steve was interested in inspecting it further. It was a faint handprint, but not an actual print, more like a painting in the shape of a hand. I say that because it had no lines or fingerprints like a real handprint would, just a solid shape of a hand. Oh yeah, and it was bright red, which is just lovely. There's also a mild, almost smoky smell hanging in the air. I feel like I've smelled it before, but can't place what it is. It's not an unpleasant smell, but given the situation, it's not helping the creepy factor. We went to inspect the front deck when the other smell hit us. It was terrible, like garbage mingling with week-old roadkill. Steve got his flashlight from his truck and shone it under the deck, but nothing had crawled there and died. There was nothing to indicate why it would smell like absolute crap in that particular spot. If you backed away from the deck 10 feet, the smell was non-existent. It was just around the area of the front door. Then we inspected the inside of the house and found nothing out of place. I grabbed some more clothes, my phone charger, which I'd forgotten in my hurry to get the heck out last night, and some dog food for my kiddos. If you haven't guessed already, I have no intention whatsoever of staying here alone until this whole thing gets figured out. I did one more walk around on the deck before leaving. When I opened the gate into the backyard, I spied something caught on the latch, something glinting in the sunlight, almost like spider silk. I took a closer look and discovered a single strand of silvery gray hair was caught on the latch. I removed it and took a good look. It was almost twice as long as my hair, and anyway, I don't have any grays yet, although after this ordeal, I won't be at all surprised to see some cropping up. This didn't belong to anyone I knew or had even been around here. I was going to show Steve when my dumb ass let the wind catch it and it flew off into the tall grass. Damn it. We got in the car and headed to the city so I could look for some cameras and some motion sensor lights. We drove by my house on the way back. All seemed normal. Steve left for work around noon, and I sat in the living room trying to figure out how I could set up the new equipment. I got 4 motion sensor lights and an infrared wildlife camera. We're going back to set it all up in the daytime. No way either of us are going to the house tonight. I started watching my house from Steve's window. Nothing interesting happened. Got bored and played on his Xbox for a while. All afternoon it was quiet. It was another hot day, and the dogs were glad to spend most of inside with me. I made some dinner for me and Steve to have when he got home, fed all of the animals, played with the cats. I did a little work on my laptop. When I sat down and wrote the second mini update on the last post, I thought there wasn't going to be much else in this one. Guess again. So Steve has a deck like mine, only it runs along the length of just one side of his house. I was on the couch trying to get a little more work done, answering the post replies and listening to music. I had a ceiling fan on and the windows were all closed. There is a sliding glass door that opens onto the deck. I was facing this door. Steve has those vertical blinds over it instead of curtains. I had them closed, but the fan was stirring them just enough so that they opened a sliver in certain places, like in a cycle, like they'd been blown open a bit in this one particular spot, then closed, open, closed, open, closed. There's also little solar-powered lanterns on his deck. They were on, but getting dim. I should have had the floodlight on, but I thought being here in his house, I could get away with not being a paranoid nut. Wrong. I was absent-mindedly looking at the sliding door while I worked, just brainstorming, and noticing I could see one of the little solar lights every time the vertical blinds blew open, until they blew open and the light was just gone. It took a moment to register what was happening. I entertained the thought that they'd gone out long enough to remember that they fade out. They don't just turn off. So the second time in 24 hours, I nearly peed myself. There was something standing between the window and the light. Crap. Every door and window is locked, but damn it, if I wasn't so petrified, I couldn't move. I was thinking if the blinds opened an inch more, I'd get a better look at what was blocking the lights. And in the same thought, I prayed to God that they wouldn't. Ben was asleep on the floor right beside the couch. In my horrified state, I still had the presence of mind to try something. I reached down and gently shook him awake, wondering if he'd pick up anything when he woke. And boy, did he ever. He looked at me curiously, thumped his tail, still pleasantly drowsy. All I did was point at the window. He looked where I was pointing and immediately stood bolt upright. His hackles were raised. He shouldn't have had any idea anything was wrong, but he believed something was there as much as I did. He took a few stalking steps toward the sliding door, and then did something I had never seen him do. He snarled at it, like a full-on, teeth-showing, eyes-flashing, throaty snarl. It was a pretty intimidating thing to behold. Then there was a sound like someone smacking the sliding door with their hand and then dragging it along, making that awful squeaking noise of skin on glass. Ben barked sharply at the sound. There was a series of loud thumps, and I knew the person or thing outside was retreating. On the next beat of the blinds, I could see the solar light again. Whatever had been outside was gone. Ben barreled toward the door, going absolutely crazy. All the other dogs showed up and were barking too. Danny was practically beside herself. She went under Steve's computer desk and peered out fearfully. I called to her, but she wouldn't come out. I shushed them all so I could phone Steve. I was pretty upset at that point. I thought seriously about calling the cops, and also considered calling Will to tell him he needed to come home early. I still haven't ruled out either one of those. Steve said he'd leave work a little early so he can get home sooner. I hope he can. I'm beside myself here. I'm trying to occupy myself by getting this part written down, and I don't know if it's the wind playing tricks on my ears, but I swear I can hear talking somewhere outside, or someone calling a name that I can't quite make out, and whistling, but not like a bird, more like the way someone whistles when they want your attention. It's so windy I can barely hear it, but I'm sure it's not in my head. I'm currently huddled in the guest room with Netflix going in the background on my laptop, just so I can't hear those noises outside. It's too freaky. Oh, and while I had Steve on the phone, I brought up the howling cats I heard last night. He informed me that he had shut all 3 cats in the house before bed. Update. Steve is home now, so I'm not alone anymore. First thing he asked when he got in was if I had heard voices and whistling outside. We're talking about possibly getting police involved, but we're worried as soon as we start talking about this unexplainable stuff, they're going to think we've been smoking too much and will blow us off. Update 2. I just woke up from a really bad nightmare and I wanted to write about it here. I dreamt I was in my house. It was like it was night, but not night. The sky was dark, but I could still see things clearly. I heard something like wind chimes outside, so I went to look. I could see something hanging in the trees, clanking together and making the noise. I thought it was sticks at first, but pretty soon it became clear that it was fracking bones dangling from the branches. They banged together and made this weird hollow sound. Dream me was just beginning to think that they were human bones when the dream morphed into something different. I was running along in the dark on all 4s. All I could see was a trail ahead of me. Something was driving me to keep running in the direction I was going, but I wasn't fully aware what it was. In the darkness on either side of me, the whispering began. A soft sound at first, so indistinct it might have been wind. Then it got faster, more urgent, until hundreds of voices were whispering. Then they were chattering. I couldn't understand any words, and I found I didn't really care. I just needed to keep running. I wasn't scared, but determined. The chattering got louder and more anxious sounding until the voices were like a howling wind. I kept running. And then I was normal me again, laying in my own bed in my own house, and something warm was across my chest. It was heavy, but not in a bad way. In fact, there was something extremely comforting about it. I touched the warm thing. It was soft. It seemed like I was safe in this dream until I noticed a figure in the doorway. It was tall, thin, and human-like, but at the same time something was terribly wrong with it that made it seem far less human, distorted, stretched. I wanted to hide, but the warm, heavy thing on me kept me from hurling myself off the bed. I couldn't see any distinct features in the figure, but I could just tell it was looking right at me. And then I woke up for real, still in Steve's guest room with my hand full of Ben's coat. I got up to write this out and discovered my grandma's cross necklace was off. I've been sleeping with it on. Naturally, I freaked out and started looking for it. I found it tangled up in a blanket I had kicked under the floor in my sleep. I don't remember taking it off, and it's the kind of necklace with a clasp. You can't just take it off and on over your head. I don't know if I'll be going back to sleep after that nightmare. I feel half sick. Update 3. It's about 6 a.m. here, and I haven't been able to get back to sleep. Will is coming home today, and I'm going to have to sit down with him to fill him in on everything. We'll be working on installing the new lights in the infrared camera, and I am going to try to get some decent rest tonight. I just feel like crap right now. I haven't had a decent night's sleep since Sunday, and I'm just so worn out, both emotionally and physically. I look about 5 years older. I feel about 5 years older. So it may be a day or two before I post another full update, but I promise not to leave you guys hanging. You'll hear about anything that happens before the weekend is over. Scout's honor. I have to be at the airport in a few hours to pick up Will. I'm taking Big Ben with me. So this is part 3 of the our No Sleep Reddit post. My first night alone in my new house didn't go so well. What do you think? Please leave your opinions in the comment below. Part 4 will be coming soon. I hope you find my content interesting enough to subscribe to my channel, post comments to share your thoughts, and enable that notification bell. Also, it would mean the world to me if you click that like button. Thank you all, and good night.